Hello and welcome to Cool Sports Guy. I'm Tom. Welcome to Week 9. Jarrett is joining me today as well. How are you, Jarrett?
Doing pretty good.
All right. It's good to be halfway through the season. Well, for some of us, not a good time to root for the Bucks, but we'll see how the second half of the season goes. Well, you're a Bears fan, so listen, it'll get better. I promise. One day.
I'm not mad being a Bears fan right now. Our offense looks great. Justin Fields looks great. I couldn't ask for much more at this point. Next year, we're going to have 9 draft picks and over $130 million in cap space. Not much to complain about.
Fair enough. Cool. Well, let's jump right into it. So we're halfway through the season, but we actually went back and looked at the sophomore year QBs. You went through a lot of homework, looked at a lot of stats, and we rated our top 1 to 5 or 6 of them. I forgot. 6 of them. Sorry.
There was 5 first rounders, and then I included Davis Mills because he's basically been a starter like both 2 seasons.
That's fair. So, we are going to take a good look at them, and then we're going to decide on, who's the best and who probably should not be in the league. So let's take a look. So first, before we start, make sure to check out our webpage, coolsportsguy.com, our Twitter, our Instagram, and our Facebook. And go ahead and get these out, and I get these slides in. All right, so here we go. The very first QB that we are going to look at is the... Oh, never mind. Hey, look, this is these are all the quarterbacks. So we got Trey Lance, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, and Davis Mills in that order. All right, so let's take a look, but not in this order. First one we got is Trevor Lawrence. So he was number 1 overall draft pick by the Jacksonville Jaguars. So here we got the rookie and sophomore year stats. Now, don't be alarmed because keep in mind that the sophomore year is only halfway through. So started all the games last year. Of course, this year, 8 of them. Completion percentage, almost, right down the middle, I would say. Pass attempts is slower by last year's standards. Yards also probably a little over 50%, but not that bad. Completion percentage, like I said, it's 62. So touchdowns, 10 touchdowns already. Last year was 12, but of course, again, he played 17 games last year. We're only 8 games in. Interceptions is already 6, still on pace to hit that 17, it seems like. And then 3 rushing touchdowns, 5 fumbles, 4 of them lost. So, do you want me to keep going on them, or?
I mean, I'm gonna point out something that I just realized. I think it would have been smart to include like passing yards per game on for a per game basis. Maybe would have been a little bit more helpful here. Hindsight is 2020, but with looking at it, I think I'm not a big stats guy. I have made that very clear on the podcast pretty much every single episode ever. But just looking 100% based on stats, you can tell that Trevor Lawrence is having a much better year this year than he did last year. He is still struggling a bit in some games, but he does look a lot better. All of the rookies pretty much last year struggled immensely, except you could maybe say Mac Jones. But he had a rough rookie season. So far into his sophomore year, they started off really good, and then he's kind of been through the last, I think, 2-3 games. But I think it definitely is a major improvement from his part.
Yeah, and look, he's not used to losing, right? So this last 2 years is very different and new to him. And obviously, as you know, is very high on the Jacksonville Jaguars, and then they just dropped off like no other. Hope they bounce back, but I don't necessarily see them bouncing back and making it to the playoffs. They're not in a good shape right now. But as far as just him or just Trevor Lawrence go, I'll say I almost want to say last year doesn't count for him. He was just put into such an atrocious situation with the coaching, with everything. And I just really hope that, the owner, Shad Khan, decides to say, hey, Doug Peterson, this is your first year. You're first year here, we're gonna keep you on for however long before I just pull the plug on you, um, and give him another year or two to get in sync and get in rhythm and get that team together. But yeah, as far as potential, the way he's playing, how good he can be, I think he's doing great. Um, and I feel like people are unforgiving. We tend to not look at the situations around before we say, "Hey, this guy's a bust or not." He just was not put into the best situation.
Which for me personally, I think like declaring any young quarterback within like their first year and a half a bust is the most ridiculous thing ever. I don't
Yeah,
think any of these guys you can say is a bust or not. You can have like like an inkling towards what you think they could become based on play, but I
right.
don't think you can flat out say, "Oh, they're a bust because a year and a half into their NFL career, they're not lights out MVP level." I think like Patrick Mahomes, like spoiled what young quarterbacks are. Most
Yeah,
young quarterbacks don't just come in and play at an MVP level
no.
immediately.
Most
That
young
doesn't happen.
quarterbacks don't come in and just start.
That
I,
also fair, yeah. That's more of a
um,
new trend because I know back in the day, like number one overall picks weren't just like guaranteed to start like they are
no,
nowadays.
no. And I remember, not to throw Brady into this, but I remember like in Brady's draft class, the number one quarterback that was picked overall, he never even made it to regular season. They're a lot more forgiving now on that. And as far as and here's the thing, I think when you're coming out of when you're the best player coming out of college, the expectations are too high for you. But the reality is, usually when you're the best, you get picked first. If you're getting picked first, guess what? The team probably sucked the previous year. Like, you are not going into a good situation. So it's gonna take some time. So good news is, so far, fingers crossed, he has been able to stay healthy. So it's just a matter of, hopefully they can build some around him. And it looks like Jacksonville last year too, they are moving in, and they did move in the right direction. And they will hopefully continue to do so.
Yeah, I like you said, his first year kind of a throwaway. Urban Meyer was probably put him in the only team with like a worse situation than Justin Fields with like Nagy, because I'll even admit Urban Meyer is probably the worst head coach I've ever seen, and since I've watched football, it's been that bad. And just like overall talent around him, I feel like this year it's improved, but it's still not great. It's not the worst of all of these quarterbacks we're going to be talking about, but it's definitely not great. Christian Kirk, I think he's a solid average, like, wide receiver 2 that they're paying wide receiver 1 money, which I can kind of see where the logic comes in, where you want to like, I mean, you're going to have to overpay because it's a bad team. Like, great players aren't going to want to just like go play there if they know the team's going to be bad. So you're going to
Right.
have to overpay because the money entices everybody. So you get Christian Kirk there, and so you're going to overpay to get him some targets that like are better than they were last year. And I don't hate Christian Kirk as a receiver. I actually was interested in the Bears getting him this offseason for like around 12 million a year. And then he gets, what was it, like 20 or 22 or something like that. And I was like, I'm very happy we didn't get him because that's outrageous.
Yeah.
But he has decent weapons. Kirk's not bad. I think he's a solid player, just not like a wide receiver 1. Zay Jones is a solid like wide receiver 3. Marvin Jones Jr. is not bad either. I think it's another wide receiver 2. So he just doesn't truly have that like wide receiver 1 right now, but he has a solid group of wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3s. And Travis Etienne, the running back, who was actually his college teammate, I'm a big fan of his. I do have him in my fantasy league. He is a solid player, and I think that he's going to help Trevor Lawrence a lot throughout their careers. I think that I don't know what whenever Trevor Lawrence was coming in, he was described as like a generational talent, like best quarterback to come out since Andrew Luck, which I'm not saying isn't the case. I still think he can be generational, but I think that like I personally, from what I've seen, even not just stats wise, just from what I've seen on tape, I still think he could be very, very good and could be that generational type guy. But I would say I would take him down a peg from best quarterback since Andrew Luck. But I think he still has a lot of hope. And I think like Doug Peterson's going to do a lot for him because Doug Peterson, in my opinion, is a great coach for quarterbacks.
Andrew Luck he was great, but as far as best talent, or best quarterback since Andrew Luck, I'm gonna put a pause on. I'm going to put a pin right there. It's not even about Trevor Lawrence. I'm sorry, but we have seen better quarterbacks than Andrew Luck since Andrew Luck.
Well, what they mean is like the I don't know how to word it. Like college, like how they played in college, like how they were viewed as a prospect from college. Because yeah, we have seen
Okay,
better quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes, but like going from college
gotcha.
to the pros, Andrew Luck was an undisputed number one pick. No one was. If you didn't take him number one, you're the dumbest franchise of all time. And there
Fair enough.
hasn't really been like an undisputed number one pick quarterback like since then. Maybe Burrow, but like the difference with that is Luck was like a stud all through his college career. Burrow wasn't really a good prospect till his senior year. So I don't know if that I described that well
No,
enough, but
yeah,
that's kind
no,
of
that
what it
makes
means.
so much more sense. I was when you said that initially, I was just like, what are you talking about? Have you seen some of these guys play? But all right, so we'll move on to the number 2 overall pick,
Which
Zachary Wilson. What's that?
I can take this one since you did
All right,
Lawrence,
go
and then
for
it
it.
matches up well for the fourth guy. But so Zach Wilson, the New York Jets quarterback, his rookie year again. None of these guys' rookie years are very good, except maybe Mac Jones, but we'll get to him a bit later. His rookie year, he did start 13 games. I think he missed a few due to injury. He had 213 completions on 383 attempts, which is like a 56 completion percentage, which isn't awful, but it's not necessarily good either. Me personally, I think 60 and above is more so like the range I would prefer a quarterback to have. 2,334 passing yards, for 13 games, that is still a little low. And then he had 9 touchdowns to 11 interceptions, which, you always, the way I've learned about it is your touchdown to interception ratio for like the elite guys is like minimum like 4 touchdowns to 1 interception. So obviously, if you have that many more interceptions than touchdowns, it's not a good look. But I get it. He was in a very bad situation last year when it came to like talent around him. He did have 4 rushing touchdowns on top of that as well. He did fumble the ball 5 times, but he only lost 1 of them. And then this year, his sophomore year, he did add a lot of talent. I think that he probably, in my opinion, has the best supporting cast out of all of these guys. Uh, you know, Breece Hall, I know he's hurt now, but Breece Hall is a great running back. I think he's going to be good for a long time. And then behind him, you have Michael Carter. He now has James Robinson. His receivers, he has Corey Davis, who I think is like a low tier wide receiver 1. High tier wide receiver 2. You got Garrett Wilson, the number 10 overall pick, who I think he's very much going to be a wide receiver 1 in the league and at elite level. And then Braxton Berrios isn't a bad receiver either. I think he's a low tier wide receiver 2, high tier wide receiver 3. He has pieces all around him. They got CJ Uzama from Cincinnati in the offseason, so he has a solid tight end. His offensive line has had some injury issues, but I don't think that they're bad enough to where he should be playing that bad. But, he's only started 5 games this year. As you know, he hurt his knee in, I think, like the second or third preseason game. So he missed like the first 4 weeks, I think. He has, in the 5 games, has had 78 completions on 142 attempts. His completion percentage dropped a little bit to a little below 55. He has 1,048 passing yards, which is on pace to break how many he had last year. But he only has 3 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. So once again, has 2 more interceptions than touchdowns. He has 1 rushing touchdown and actually 1 receiving touchdown this year. And he has not fumbled the ball at all, which is really, really good sign. Young quarterbacks always seem to be fumble prone. But I think stats wise, it's not great either. But on like watching games, I'm going to preface this. I have not seen every snap from every single one of these quarterbacks. I'm not going to act like I know more than anyone on these things. But from what I have seen, which is a handful of games from all of them, Zach Wilson has struggled a lot this year. I think he's regressed going into this year, which is really bizarre to me because I think that he ended his rookie year so strong. I thought he was going to probably be like have the best start to this year at least, which the injury, yeah, kind of halted that. But even since he's played, it hasn't been that great either. And with his supporting cast, I think it's a little disappointing to say the least with how his play has been.
Yeah, so I remember last year, or not last year, I'm sorry, beginning of this year, before the season started, I told you that the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to be the most improved team in the NFL this year. And I remember you telling me it's going to be the Jets. because of what they've did with that roster. And they have a good roster, especially that defense. That defense is actually playing very well. Unfortunately, Zach Wilson's not. And it's not just your opinion that he's regressed. The numbers support it. And I think it's true. He is athletic. As you can see, the 4 rushing touchdowns last year. He's athletic. He can run around, but I don't think he is a good decision maker. And I think that's his biggest flaw is when when the walls are closing in, he does not make the best decisions. I don't know if that's something you can just turn around. Hopefully he can, but as of right now, that number 2 overall pick is not looking too solid. I got to be very honest. I'm not the biggest fan of the guy.
Yeah, I like last year I wasn't a big fan of him either. Like even like when he got drafted, I was like, I feel like that's a reach because there's always those quarterbacks who like in college they're like okay, nothing special, and then like comes draft time, they just rise up draft boards for whatever reason because I don't know. And then he got drafted, and I was like, I feel like that's a little bit of a reach, but I'm gonna wait and see. And then going into his rookie year, I was like, I don't see anything really impressive. And then I was really low on him. And then my buddy David, he was like, go back and watch these weeks of his play, and he's looked a lot better. And I went back and watched it, and I'm like, actually, I think Zach Wilson, he's starting to progress a little bit, and he looks a lot better of a quarterback. And then all of that just went away. I would say a really big problem from him and a couple of these other guys is they try to play too much like hero ball instead of just taking what's given to them. Trevor Lawrence has a problem with it. Justin Fields has a problem with it.
You're not in college anymore.
Yeah, the thing was most of these guys like Lawrence and Fields especially had such good like rosters around them in college. They were like the powerhouses of like college football. They could do stuff like that, but now you're at like, since you were drafted so early, for the most part, they're on like low end rosters. They don't have the talent to just go out there and do stuff like that. But he has definitely regressed, and it's sad to see, but I don't want to, I can't say I'm not surprised. I'm not like throwing it out the window and calling him a bust at all right now. But I think that the Jets, if they had a different quarterback who was more competent, they would look a lot better. I think that they're winning despite him instead of winning because of him. And you never want that with your young quarterback.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't. I feel like with how much improvement the team has made, and for him to take a step back, maybe it is a lot of pressure on him. I don't know. I was never the biggest fan of him last year, and believe it or not, I continue to not be the biggest fan of him this year. So, and look, and I've changed my minds on quarterbacks just in general. His has probably gone down. It's not just the numbers. I think just the way he plays, he's not going to be very successful, and he won't last very long in the NFL if he continues to play the way he does right now.
That's very fair, yeah.
All right, Trey Lance. I don't know what to say about this guy. So he started 2 games last year. He played in 6, right? 41 completions and 71 attempts. That's essentially 2 games worth of throws, right? It's about 35 throws. I know it's on the higher end, but 57% completion, 603 yards, 5 interceptions, 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. So obviously this year he started 2 games. Second game, he was injured, broken foot. He's clearly out for the season. He had 0 touchdown, 1 interception, and he had a fumble. This is the guy I can talk the least about, quite simply because, well, I haven't seen anything from him. I think he could be great. He's athletic. He seems like he could be a pretty solid quarterback, and then obviously under the Kyle Shanahan offense, he could be a pretty good quarterback. I don't really see anything much more than that, but I also don't have too much data in front of me to say, hey, I see less or more than that. I mean, Trey Lance is Trey Lance. He was there. Obviously, they moved up and they saw something in him. They moved up in the draft. They got him. They were going to try and boo Jimmy G. That didn't happen. They still started Trey Lance. That didn't really go the greatest for them. He got hurt, and then now Jimmy G's and they're starting to, well, they're somewhat winning games. So I don't know. I really don't have much to say about him.
Yeah. I was tempted to like not include him on the list, but at the same time, he was such like I'm not saying that because like anything with talent. I think with like how little he's played because his rookie year, he was benched, which I think was a smart move. I think he was super raw coming into the NFL that he should have been benched. I think this year he should have been benched to start the season as well. But I thought I should include him anyways because of the high draft pick and the fact that he has played a little bit. So you've seen something from him. But yeah, not super impressive for me. He's another guy who I felt like looked better in his rookie year than he did his sophomore year. I mean, I watched him this year. He hasn't. I mean, he didn't really do much. I will give him a pass for this year because the first game was against the Bears in like that monsoon weather where it's really hard to look like a good quarterback in that.
Yeah.
And like even the interception he threw was to Eddie Jackson, who just made a great play on the ball. Like was just an elite safety play. That's for a young quarterback. That's really hard to avoid. You're going to make mistakes like that. So I'm not going to like hate on him too much because we haven't seen enough. But he has. I need to see more from him before I like. Oh, I think he's going to be great. I think more so to compare him to like my pre-draft analysis. I think that it was a little bit of an overdraft. I'm never a big fan of drafting like those small school guys that early because they've never really played at even like an elite college level like talent against them. So to go from like low end college talent to the NFL is such a big step, and that's very, very hard to do. I wasn't a big fan of his either. I think I was lower on him than I was Zach Wilson going into the draft. Again, I'm not a big fan of the small schools. He can prove me wrong, not writing him off yet, but not a big fan of his. I think, honestly, I don't even know if this is a hot take at this point or not. I think if the 49ers drafted Justin Fields here, oh my God, he would be so good. Like, Fields, like, I think he's doing a lot better. Like, as you've seen in the past few weeks, which we will get into later, he has progressed so much. But I think if you would have put him immediately day one into a Shanahan-like offense, because Shanahan is such a good coach, like one of the best in the leagues. He's such an brilliant mind. I think Fields would be already like at an elite level if he was being coached under Shanahan at this point. And I think that would have been a much smarter move. But I'm not gonna be disappointed by that because he went to the Bears.
We're gonna. That's the next one. So you already kind of bridged over. So I'm gonna let you just continue to rant on about your favorite guy.
My boy, number 11 overall pick.
Here's my one question: would you love him as much as you love him right now if he was not playing for the Bears?
I mean, obviously, do you mean like, do I love him as a player, or do I think he would be would my opinion on how good he would be
yes, and love him as a player?
I love him as a player more because he's on the Bears, yes. Okay. But I love Justin Fields going into the draft. Which sucks is this was actually like the 1 year in like the past 4 years that I didn't do a mock draft because I just didn't have time to do it. And I used to do them before that because just for fun. Like I didn't do a podcast. I didn't do any sports talking. I just made them because I thought they were fun. But this was the 1 year I didn't. So like I have nothing to go back on to like prove any of this. But I love Justin Fields in the draft. And I remember like going into the draft, we were picking at like 21 or 23, something like that going into the draft. And I was like, oh, well, there's no chance we get any of these quarterbacks except maybe Mac Jones anyways. And then he started sliding and I was like, something could happen with this. And I remember when it showed like the little ticker on the board for Chicago has traded with New York Giants for pick 11. I'm like, there's no way. And we traded up and got Justin Fields. I was flipping out. I was so excited. I loved him going into the draft. I did think that there was obviously he wasn't a perfect prospect, but I thought his the negatives on him were not super hard fixes for an NFL prospect. So I definitely loved the pick. If he would have went, like I said, if he went to the 49ers, I think he'd be even better than he is now. The Jets, I think he'd be better than he is now. The Jaguars, maybe not, because Trevor Lawrence is in a really bad spot with that Urban Meyer first year. So I don't know about that one. But I think if he went to the Jets or the 49ers, I think both of those teams would be very, very good right now. But his stats wise, it's really hard to defend him because his stats haven't been great. But like watching the tape is wherever you see the like elite plays that you need to see. His rookie year, he played in 10 games. Oh, sorry. He played in 12 games, started in 10. He threw 270 passes, had 159 completions, just under 60% completion percentage, and had a little under 2,000 yards. He had 7 touchdowns to 10 interceptions, which isn't great. But I will also say that Justin Fields is the most unlucky person when it comes to interceptions. It's a little bit on him. I'm not going to completely he doesn't deserve any of these, but so many of his passes get batted down at the line and get picked off. Like you see every quarterback's passes get batted all the time, but it usually gets batted to like the ground or like away from anyone. Every time this man's ball gets batted, every time he gets
passes and batted passes that gets tipped are like the worst ones to watch, especially like when you're throwing it and you see the ball gets batted, it goes the other direction and there's just that one guy standing there that just lands in his belly.
I'm pretty sure like 3 of his 6 interceptions this year were from tipped at the line. Like, it's been ridiculous because I know the 49ers, he had a bad interception that was awful. And then the Texans, he had 2 really bad interceptions that were his fault. But I know the Patriots one was tipped at the line. And I'm pretty sure I know there was another one that got tipped at the line and like a defensive tackle got the interception or something. I don't remember what game it was. But yeah, no, he's super unlucky when it comes to it. But his rookie year, he did have 2 rushing touchdowns. Biggest problem with Fields, as you could tell by the stats, is fumbles. This also includes though like the ones where he like gets hit as he's like running to the sideline and the ball goes out of bounds. That still counts, which I've said this many of times. He does need to work on his fumbles. I get that. He had 12 fumbles with 5 of those lost his rookie year. This year he has 11 fumbles with 1 lost. Again, I will defend Fields when it's necessary, but at this point, like he really needs to fix the fumbling problem. That's been a problem since we drafted him. But I don't think that that's like such a negative that it drops how good of a player he is, in my opinion. But yeah, his sophomore year so far this year, which he has started all 8 games for us, he has a really low amount of attempts, which makes sense because we've been playing against a lot of teams that have bad run defenses, or like week 1, it was in a monsoon. He's not going to throw the ball that much. And he also has like the worst receiving core in the league to throw to.
He also, maybe you didn't mention this yet, but he also does not have a good offensive line.
Oh, his offensive line is awful. I think honestly out of the 6 quarterbacks, I think either him or Davis Mills have the worst supporting cast, which the Bears have pieces on their offensive line, but I don't know if you know of a guy who goes by the name Sam Mustipher, who we can never get rid of. He's our starting center. So going into the year, we signed.
Is that the guy's video that I sent you the other day?
Yes,
who was just running away?
That is Sam Mustipher. I have hated him for years.
What was that?
I don't know. He's been doing that forever. He's the worst. Like, watch any Bears game, pay attention to the center, and watch them run right past him. So many plays, like the other linemen get credited for like sacks because they like push the D lineman off to him, and he's just like nowhere to be found. And so Fields gets sacked for it. It's awful. But so we signed Lucas Patrick from Green Bay in the offseason to replace him. Lucas Patrick broke his hand in one of the preseason games, so Sam Mustipher had to start. Awful. But then then Lucas Patrick comes back, but then Cody Whitehair, our left guard, gets hurt. So we move Lucas Patrick to left guard, and then Mustipher starts at center. And then in the Patriots game, we move Lucas Patrick back to center, and then we bring a backup offensive lineman to left guard because Sam Mustipher is that bad. And then Lucas Patrick, I think, got hurt again. So Sam Mustipher has to start again, and we can never escape this man. I despise him. He's the worst offensive lineman I've ever seen.
I just don't understand. Like, it's one thing if you're trying to block and they just push you down or push you away and run straight through you. Okay, sure. Hey, you couldn't hold a guy. But snap of the ball, it's almost like I'm going to close my eyes and I'm just going to push, even if there's nothing in front of me. Like, this dude just literally took off. And he was like 15 yards away from Justin Fields. And that's not because Justin Fields was scrambling. That's because he was just gone.
I don't know if he thought it was a screenplay or something. That's what my assumption is. I don't know.
Maybe.
But So he did that against New England. There's another video I saw on Twitter. He did the same thing against the Cowboys. Like the same thing where he just took off running to the sideline in the middle of a play. I don't know what is wrong with him, but he is so bad. I think we need to like sign someone like I will play center better than that man does. He is so bad. But I could rant about Tay Mustapher for the entire hour of this. But Fields does not have a good supporting cast. His offensive line, Tevin Jenkins, I think, is a great right guard. But honestly, other than that, we have holes all over the offensive line. Receiver-wise, Mooney, I think, is a low-end wide receiver 1 or like a great wide receiver 2. But when he's the only receiver we have that's even capable of being a wide receiver like 3 or better, that kind of sucks. Because N'Keal Harry, we traded for from New England.
First of all, how did you trade for N'Keal Harry?
I mean, when he's played, he's done good. He's only played for the 2 games. Well, one of the things is we're a very run-heavy team. I don't like PFF, but they sometimes their rankings make a lot of sense. I just don't really like using that as the only definitive reasoning. But his PFF score for his run blocking, I think he was like either like the first or second best run blocking receiver in football. Byron Pringle was too, and we signed him in the offseason, so it's very obvious we want our receivers to run block. But Harry got a touchdown against Dallas, and he's like the only guy on our team that is good at like getting contested catches because he has such a like big frame.
I guess he definitely sucked in New England.
New England has not very wide receiver friendly system though. They never really have been. They're very tight end friendly, but they're not receiver friendly. And I think that they utilized him wrong. I'm not saying he's going to be great with the Bears or anything by any means, but I think he could be a decent wide receiver 3. But he has Mooney, and then he has Pringle's been hurt all year. Harry was hurt until the last two games. And so his number 2 and number 3 receivers was Dante Pettis, who is the most inconsistent player I've ever seen. He's either makes really, really good catches or he drops everything that comes to him. And then his number 3 was Equinemius St. Brown, who I don't hate. And I think he could be a solid wide receiver 4 or 5 on a roster, but to get as much playing time as he does, I'm not comfortable with. If you don't know, the man is 6'5", but he plays like he's like 5'9". Like he is so much bigger than cornerbacks, but you can't throw jump balls to him because he plays so small. It's really hard to like if you watch the game and watch him, you'll understand what I mean. But it's really hard to describe. But he plays like he's smaller than he is. So Field, and then at tight end, I love Cole Kmet. Cole Kmet is I think he's an elite run blocker at tight end. He needs some work in the receiving game, and that's when it comes to helping Fields, it would be in the receiving game. So obviously not a big help. So he doesn't really have a great receiving tight end either, which in our offense that we utilize the tight end in the receiving game quite a lot. He does have really good, one of the best, if not the best running back duo in football with Monty and Herbert, but that only helps you so much. So he definitely has an awful supporting cast. But his rookie year was rough. Nagy is the worst coach I've ever seen other than Urban Meyer. But his play calling was awful. I will say one of the reasons I think that he started off so slow this year, Luke Getsy, he was the Green Bay's quarterback coach last year. And then he's our offensive coordinator now. And he's a rookie play caller. He's never called plays in the NFL before. And so whenever he, like the first few weeks, you could tell he was kind of like learning on the spot, seeing what worked and what didn't. And I feel like the last few weeks, he's kind of like gotten a little confidence and kind of like understanding what works best.
Plus, he was a QB coach for somebody who probably didn't need a QB coach.
Also fair. But, you know, it's he also, one thing I like about him more than Nagy is Nagy was so hard-headed, like he would not change up his system at all. He's like, no, if it doesn't work, it's because of you. It's not because of me. And I hated that. Getsy was seeing that like, oh, our offense isn't playing as well as it should. We definitely have some issues. And he went and he actually got plays from Baltimore's playbook to utilize running with the quarterback like they do with Lamar Jackson.
Right.
And I'm not a big fan of running with Fields like too much because it causes like more injury problems. Mm-hmm. But he's done really well with it, and I can't complain. But I really like that he's like I need to be better, and so that's what he went out and did, and he changed up his system to make it a little bit better for the team. And he actually, our offense went from I think like ranked like 31st to 24th just in the last 2 weeks because we put up We put up like, was it like 34 on the Patriots, who have a great
Yeah,
defense, and then
they do.
he put up 29 against probably the best defense in football.
Yeah.
He's done a great job the last few weeks, which that's not really me talking about Fields. Fields himself, I think, just from a physical talent standpoint, Fields he has the talent and the potential to be an elite quarterback and be like an all pro level quarterback. And I know I had texted you, I think it was after the Texans game, and I was like, this is the least confident I've been in Fields like his entire career. Like that was just an awful, awful game. He made so many bad mistakes. I wish I wouldn't have just like flips like that so fast. The next week I think the next week was against the Vikings, and he kind of like turned it around and played a lot better. And I was like, okay, I just freaked out a little bit. We're fine. I would say the game against either Washington, which I know was a loss and we didn't put up points, but he played really good in that game. And then there was the one against New England, though. I was like, this is our franchise quarterback. This guy is going to be so good.
Pay him now.
If it was legal and possible, then yes, he is going to be so good. Like I said, worst supporting cast, and as of the last few weeks, he's played better than anyone else. I don't want to keep ranting about him too long because I definitely could. I love Justin Fields, as you could tell, big fan of his.
Yeah.
But he's just. I think once he gets that supporting cast and some better receivers, which the Bears traded for Chase Claypool, which I know isn't like an elite receiver or anything, but that's a very solid receiver. I think, again, he's like on that Mooney tier where he's like low-end wide receiver 1, like high-end wide receiver 2. I think just adding him alone should make our offense that much better and make Fields look that much better. And I'm excited for next year when we have all of that cap space. We might draft a receiver in like the first or second round, something like that. It's good. Next year, you're going to really see Justin Fields and who he is whenever he is that. Like, he's going to be so good next year. I promise you.
Probably, hopefully, we'll see. I mean, I like him too. I wasn't as obviously anywhere near as high as you were with him last year, but he's shown a lot of growth, man, and he's playing great. I know, like you said, his numbers doesn't exactly show because I mean, if you look at the completion percentage, it's low. It's lower than it was last year, slightly, but it is. But yeah, I've seen a lot of his games, and it's just like half of the, almost every other play, he's just running for his life, hoping to make a play happen. So hopefully they'll figure it out. Hopefully they'll finally get a good center in there who knows how to block, and we'll see. But I don't have anything much to add on Justin Fields. I think you kind of said it all. But I will give it to you. He is fantastic. So hopefully he has a bright future. Hopefully he stays healthy because he does run a lot. He runs around a lot. Even behind the line of scrimmage, he's running around a lot for his life. So fingers crossed. And yeah, the fumble issues, that's the only thing that I'm worried about. You can't have 11 fumbles halfway through the season. That's not okay.
His biggest mistakes were always like his decision making wasn't great. Again, the whole hero ball thing. His pocket awareness wasn't great, and he was very like hesitant and played kind of scared. Like he would take off running even if the line was fine. I guess just because of PTSD of having that bad of a line. But I know at least in the last few weeks, the game has really slowed down for him. He's even talked about this. His decision making has been so much better. The only interception he had in the last 2 games was the one that got tipped at the line of scrimmage, which I hate those interceptions so much. But he's worked on that. His pocket awareness has been better, and he's even like when there's a clean pocket, he for the most part he stayed strong in the pocket and delivered some great throws. I know his stats last game weren't great, but that was probably the best game he's ever played. He would have had 50 more yards on that drive or on that game at least. But he threw one of them, like the most perfect 50-yard pass I've ever seen, right into the hands of Velus Jones, who flat out dropped it.
Yeah.
Fields he's going to be great. I think he already has a top 5 deep ball in the entire league. I have no doubts in my mind that he's going to be an elite quarterback.
Well, let's talk about another elite quarterback, which is 15th overall pick, Mac Jones for the New England Patriots. So obviously he started all the games last year. 67% completion percentage, 3,800 yards for a rookie QB with the Patriots. That's actually not terrible. 22 TDs, 13 touchdowns, 7 fumbles, 3 losses. And then obviously this year, it's he didn't start all the games. Fans are chanting for Bailey Zappi. His completion percentage is low. He's not even at 1,000 yards yet. Which means, by the way, 5 games into it, if you're not at 1,000 yards, guess what? You're not even averaging 200 yards a game. 3 TDs, 7 interceptions, 1 rushing touchdown, 2 fumbles, 1 loss. Mac Jones is one of those guys who you've been saying it from the get-go. Low ceiling, right? And high floor, low ceiling. And I think we're starting to see it a little. And the funny thing is, I forgot who I was talking to about this, but when I said something about Mac Jones, they said, "Hey, this is the Patriots QB, and it shouldn't have been Tom Brady that they wrote the draft report on." I don't know, or a combine report. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about.
I don't think so.
Brady's combine report says something along the lines of poor built, skinny, gets knocked down easily, cannot throw a tight spiral. Under pressure, he will essentially make mistakes. I forgot the exact wording on it. I think it fits perfectly. And I don't know if he will probably improve a bit more, but like you said, I think he has a very low ceiling. And I don't know. It just doesn't. It seems like I remember I liked him so much last year. The way he was playing last year, I was like, man, if this is his rookie year, and he's getting into the rhythm and he's doing a great job, he can potentially next year. And look, he took him to the playoffs last year, right? You could say the Patriots defense had a lot to do with this year, but Patriots defense always had a lot to do with them going to the playoffs, right? I'm not going to give Brady all the credit. And he played pretty solid. I think, again, 3,800 yards for a quarterback for a team, even in this day and age, believes in running the football and playing hard defense more than anything is quite a bit. But man, it's not looking pretty for him this year. And we thought we were going to jump on the Bailey Zappi bandwagon for a second, but it looks like he's also not doing that great after the 2 games he started. But nonetheless, Mac Jones, I feel like he's one of those guys where, for the most part, you know what to expect out of him. Make the situation around him great, and he will be really good. Make the situation around him not that great, and he could make some critical mistakes. And that is, to me, at least so far within these season and a half that he's played, that's the definition of Mac Jones. Things around him has to be really, really, really good.
My thing with Mac Jones, like kind of like how I pointed out the whole like low ceiling, high floor thing. I think that's because he's not like he doesn't have the like physical ability that like an elite quarterback would have, like a Patrick Mahomes, a Herbert, those kind of guys where they have like the arm strength, they have the accuracy, they have like the big playability. Obviously, he's an NFL quarterback. He can make big plays, but that's not his strong suit. Mac Jones is very much like a game manager. He can do those checkdowns, those short passes, and occasionally can throw one deep. But that's not like his game isn't big plays. And with that being said, I feel like this year, I know for sure, like the Bears game especially, I feel like all of his mistakes came whenever he was trying to make big plays. Like the interception he threw that got him benched to Jaquan Brisker, future defensive rookie of the year, by the way. I don't know what he was doing. Like it was one of the worst things I've ever seen. Like he very well could have thrown it away.
It hit the camp.
I don't think it did.
Okay.
I've seen the video, and I could see that. The NFL, which I'm not saying I believe in them because the NFL said it, but the NFL said that the wires are so much farther ahead than like the ball was that there's no way it hit it. But from the video, I don't know if you can tell, but so they show the ball like spiraling in slow motion, and then whenever it drops it and hits the wire, they speed it up, and I feel like that messes with like watching the ball because they changed the speed of which the ball turns. I don't know. I'm not saying it did or it didn't per se. I don't think it personally did. Regardless, he was trying to throw it to a receiver. There was a defender behind Brisker too who could have gotten the pick. That was not an open receiver. It was a receiver in like borderline double coverage. And Brisker got the pick, which was kind of funny because like a few plays earlier, Mac Jones, a little bit of a dirty play.
Oh, I saw.
Hiked his leg up. Mac Jones, I'm not calling him a dirty player, but he's got a few already in his career. There was like the Brian Burns, like
maybe some anger issues there, you know?
ankle twist, and now
Yeah.
this. But yeah, it was a bad play that got him benched, and I feel like that was because he was playing outside of his play style. He needs to be a game manager and like just play smart, and he hasn't played smart so far this year. And I think that's what his biggest problem is. I don't want to say like accept that you have a low ceiling, but don't play outside of your abilities.
Yeah, but you have a high floor.
Yeah, and that because he's like a smart quarterback. He's like I can't think of a game manager off the top of my head. Like a Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy Bridgewater has like a high floor, but he's not a big play person. He will win you game. He will not lose you games, but he won't win you games, kind of a thing. And I feel like that's the quarterback Mac Jones is.
I real quick, I found the thing. It says poor built, skinny, lacks great physical stature and strength, lacks mobility and ability to avoid the rush, lacks a really strong arm, can drive the ball downfield, does not throw a really tight spiral, system type player who can get exposed if forced to ad lib, gets knocked down easily.
I'd say that's very accurate, honestly.
On Brady?
I was on Mac. That's like Mac Jones to a T.
Well, that was Brady's combine report. That's what I was saying. So like somebody was telling me about how that should have been written. Those exact words should have been written for Mac Jones.
Honestly, that I would, if you would have told me that was what Mac Jones's like description was, I'd be like, yeah, makes sense to me. That's perfectly Mac Jones.
Cool. So we got one more, right? Or is that the last one?
There's one more, Mr. Davis Mills himself.
Good old Davis Mills.
Which I guess I'll take this one. I guess.
Yeah, I'm sad to take this one.
Yeah,
I like this guy, man. I feel bad for him.
Yeah, I don't think he's a bad quarterback. I think he also has a very bad supporting cast. I think his is on par with Justin Fields. But yeah, I did this really late. If you didn't know. And so me being up at 2, 3 in the morning researching Davis Mills was not a very fun time. Nothing against the guy, but it's not how I want to spend my nights. But his rookie year, I remember there was some games. I want to say there was a game against New England where he looked really, really good.
Yeah.
And Belichick's defense is always feast on young quarterbacks. And so you expect him to have a bad game. He played great in that game. He made some big time throws. Game. And that was the game where I was like, Davis Mills could be a franchise guy. I don't think he will be because they're so bad. There's no way they don't draft a quarterback.
But I think that's the year, or that's the game that Texans said, "Hey, you know what? We're just gonna build around him, rather than cutting him or trading him." Sorry, go on.
But with the fact that they have the worst record, they're probably going to draft a quarterback because Bryce Young and CJ Stroud are in this draft, and
they're going to have the number 1 pick.
Yeah. See, what I'm hoping is the Bears are going to lose a lot of games, and then therefore these other teams are going to draft quarterbacks early, and then Will Anderson, the defensive end from Alabama, slides to us when we draft him. That's my dream scenario. But back to Davis Mills. His rookie year, he had 11 games started. He played in 13. He had 263 completions, 394 attempts. He's had I think that's the best completion percentage out of all of them, with the 66.75, solid. 2,664 passing yards, 16 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. No rushing touchdowns because he's not a runner. 5 fumbles, lost one of them. Going into this year, he had 7 games started. He had 149 completions for 236 attempts, 63.14 completion percentage, about 1,500 passing yards. But that's where you can see where the stats-wise the struggle has happened. Went 8 touchdowns to 6 interceptions, so the ratio is a lot closer. Again, no rushing touchdowns. Man can't run. 4 fumbles so far and has lost one of them. He's another guy who I think isn't a stats guy. He's very much in that Mac Jones tier to me, where he's he has. I don't think he has as high of a floor as Mac Jones does, but his ceiling is on par with Mac Jones.
Yeah, he is unfortunately not in the best situation, and I feel bad for the guy just in that regard. Look, you're right. Houston, as of right now, there's no way they're going to make the playoffs. They have won 1 game so far. They have 1 tie so far. And that's it. And the reality is they can just stay at the bottom, go into the next draft, and have the number one pick. And would they have the number one pick though? Did they get some of it back?
No, they
I,
traded Watson. They
oh,
have
they
they
did.
have
They
their
did. They
pick.
traded Watson back. You're
They
right. So
also I don't know what it is now, but before the Browns won on Monday Night Football, if the season would have ended, say Sunday night, they would have had the number one overall pick from them, or for themselves, and the fourth, I think the third or fourth overall from the Browns. So if
oh
the
wow.
Browns continue to be bad, they might get two really early picks.
Yeah, they could, and I hope so. I hope they do. But so I don't know what that's going to hold as far as future for Davis Mills goes. Maybe he'll stay on as the backup quarterback in Houston. We'll never know. But yeah, the way he's playing, the pace he's on, he's not looking too good. But again, I don't think he has like you said, his offensive line isn't that great. His receivers, I mean, he's got one or two, but that's kind of it. There's no.
Yeah, I
It,
like Brandon Cooks a
I
lot,
do too.
but Cooks also he doesn't have the heart with the Texans anymore. If you don't know,
No.
he's not playing this week because he doesn't want to play for the Texans anymore. That's
Yeah, I heard.
never a good situation.
No, they
Um,
should have traded him.
and the only other, well, they wanted a second round pick and a fourth round pick, and they wanted the other team to take on $18 million in cap hit. That's
Nope.
not going to happen. But so Cook's taking him off the table. The receiver who I really like on that team is Nico Collins. I think Nico Collins is a solid number two. But again, no real number one receiver other than Cooks, who doesn't want to be there. It's very much a negative hit on a young quarterback like that.
Yeah, and I think Cooks has played with Brady before. I feel like I've said it before. I think I feel like the Bucks could have used him, but that's too much to ask for. And I think the reality is he's also past his prime. You can't just ask for all of that in return for Cooks. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's like 31 or something.
Yeah,
That's a lot.
he look. I don't even know his age, but I've seen him play. He's past his prime. And that has nothing to do with just Davis Mills being the person throwing you the ball. You're past your prime. Um, but yeah, the only thing I feel bad for Davis Mills on this is he doesn't necessarily have the supporting cast to really prove himself that much. But I think the answer is solid. He's a solid player. He's a good backup, and that's it. All right. That's the last of them, right? And we have our quarterbacks ranked.
Which you're going to be first. Yeah.
I'm gonna be first. All right. So mine's pretty straightforward. Justin Fields. I think we both really like the guy. Hey, just hold on to the football. Hopefully next year with all that cap space, Bears actually do something good with it, get you some help around you, get you a center that can open their eyes and see what the heck is in front of them and what's not in front of them. Trevor Lawrence, another guy, I think he's used to the winning culture, obviously, right? He doesn't know how to he knows how to lose now, he's been losing, but that's not something that he's not really used to. But look, I think again, give Doug Peterson another year to to kind of get more good pieces around and train and help and coach them. Trevor Lawrence can get another year in his belt, and I think they can improve. Mac Jones. I know I don't have a lot of great things to say about the guy, but I also want to say like I said, I think the Patriots, if they can get their stuff together and kind of make the situation around Mac Jones pretty good, he will always play a pretty solid game for you. Trey Lance, very straightforward. I don't know. I don't know. He can move up or down this list. As of right now, from what I've seen, hey, he's going to be also very solid. I could see him going above Mac Jones eventually once he comes back and starts and plays for a bit. But as of right now, right this second, I'm not really moving him up. Zach Wilson, I think you have more faith in him than I do because you're saying that, he ended last year. He started looking really good and he's kind of dropped off more this year. To me, he's always shown some spurts here and there. Sure, he can hurdle over some guys, but that's kind of it. So Zach Wilson's number 5. Number 6 is Davis Mills, which again, look, if Davis Mills has good help around him, I think unfortunately, the reality is we do look at quarterbacks and we're not rating them. Oh, if they have better surroundings around them, like we're rating them on how and what they're playing. And And the reality is, right now, I think Davis Mills is playing the worst out of everybody. So that's my list. Good
Okay,
ears, or you want to
yeah.
be like, oh, you suck at this?
No, I mean ours is different, but I'll explain if you just want to go over to mine. So as you can tell, our top two are the
Ooh,
same, and then there's a big difference at the bottom there.
dang.
I honestly think that this is like I think the number 1 and number 2, which I think are also interchangeable, are the no doubt number 1 and number 2. Anything else, I think is just like kind of a toss up at this point. Fields, obviously, like I had sent the text to you guys when I was talking about this idea. I wish Jose could have been here for his opinions as well, but you know he couldn't make it. But when I sent this, I made the list and I did change it from what I made. I originally had Trevor Lawrence at 1, and I was like, I want to put Fields at 1, but I feel like that would just sound really biased, and it might be my bias talking. But national media has also started putting Fields at 1, and I was like, you know, if they could do it, so can I. I'm putting Fields at 1. I love the guy, and I like how we traded Roquan Smith, we traded Robert Quinn, and we traded for Claypool. We're showing that we're going to be an offensive team from now on, which is what happens now because that's what smart teams do, and it's going to help out Fields a lot. I think he's going to have a great year to end this year, and you know next year I think he'll finally get into that like top 10 QB conversation. Lawrence at 2 makes sense, obviously. 3, Davis Mills. I have seen flashes that I really, really like, and I feel like he doesn't try and play hero ball too much. And I think once he gets a better supporting cast, if they don't replace him, I think he could be a good quarterback. If they do replace him, I could see him getting traded to like Atlanta or something like that, maybe getting another shot somewhere.
I am surprised today you do have him at number 3, though.
I originally made this list and then I kind of changed it around. I did have him, I think, at 5. I think I had him and Mac Jones switched.
Okay.
But I ended up listen, again, any of these guys could be switched around. Davis Mills, I feel like he at least has like the body type to be a good quarterback. He's a good pocket passer. I don't know. Listen, 1 and 2 I know are right. Anything else is just a toss up. Zach Wilson, I have him over Mac Jones because the end of last year I think had so many flashes of that big playability to be a great quarterback. If I was to remake, I probably should move. I'm gonna flip Wilson and Mills. Actually, I think Wilson I'd put at 3, Mills at 4. 5,
okay.
Mac Jones. I'm not high on Mac Jones. I also have this weird dislike.
Hold on, real quick. You had Mac Jones and Davis Mills initially switched.
Listen, these are all so close. They're so close. I could put them anywhere and accept it. I don't know. Mac Jones, I liked him because of last year, but looking back so far on this year, he's been atrocious when he has played. Like, I don't know, like a single like good game he's had. And then Trey Lance, I have at 6 because he hasn't played. This is more of like just adding him to the end of the list. Once he plays more, I'll have an actual opinion on him.
Fair enough.
Okay, and since we're running out of time, I guess we'll end that part there. We just have Thursday night's picks, which we don't even really have to talk about. It's
it's the Eagles all the way around.
Listen,
the Eagles are undefeated. Texans suck.
Yeah, there's no that's an easy one.
All right, so I think that kind of wraps up for today, and we will be back in a few days, and we're gonna have our week 9 picks. But until then, do you have anything to add?
I do not believe so. My list may be a little questionable, and now that I see it from an outside perspective, I'm like, maybe it's not a great list. But I wanted to say we're solid, and that's all that matters.
Well, we'll revisit it in I guess the end of the season.
Yeah, we can do something like that.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining once again. Don't forget to check out our website, coolsportsguide.com, our Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Until next time, we'll see you guys.
All right. Deuces.